All right, welcome back. So, first things first, I'm going to be trying to do this video in one take, which hopefully ends up working out just because I don't want to have to go through and edit this all together, which is going to be a little bit tricky because this should be one of my longer videos that I've done in the past few weeks, just because I'm going to be doing a full review of all of the regional finals in the past 3 regions that just finished, those being North America, Eastern Europe, and China, and I'm going to be doing those in that order as well, just because that seems to be the order of popularity, at least on my channel when it comes to viewership. And basically, I'm just going to be going through and briefly talking about all of the teams and maybe talking a little bit about some of the series that took place, what ones I'd recommend you guys watch if you missed any of them, and just trying to give a brief little review of what you guys may have missed and what we can maybe look forward to in the next coming weeks, either from roster changes or teams moving forward, or, you know, teams that are pretty happy with their performance. So, starting off with North America, like I'd mentioned, again, hopefully not spending too long talking about all this stuff. I don't want to get too stuck in the nitty-gritty of all this, especially with North America, where the first half of the series were pretty one-sided, which is kind of what we were expecting, at least in 2 of them, those being the ones that included 4 Zoomers, which is this first series here that I'm going to be talking about, which was in the upper bracket round 1. Of course, every team starting in the upper bracket, where we had Quincy Crew taking on 4 Zoomers. And Quincy Crew heading into this top seed, they only dropped that one series to Evil Geniuses, but even though they dropped that series, there was their motivation in question about that one, because that was around the time that Valve had announced that there wouldn't be a major. And so Quincy Crew was talking about how they might even forfeit the series, but regardless, they lose that one. But coming into this, Quincy Crew still looked quite good. They looked like they had really honed their craft. Their drafts looked fantastic. All of their new players were playing very, very well, especially with how shortly the team has been together. You know, it was all unfortunate and stuff that they didn't end up getting any sponsors throughout the tour. But it would seem that for TSM, they probably made the right call with which roster they would end up signing, as it would end up paying off quite well. But yeah, this first series here, again, with kind of the hierarchy that NA's region kind of has right now, we still kind of have the same thing when it comes to 4 Zoomers just not quite being to the same level as these 3 other teams, Evil Geniuses, Quincy Crew, and TSM FTX. And they have shown that they're able to beat all the teams below them. They beat Wildcard twice, who was probably the #1 candidate to replace 4 Zoomers in that 4th spot. And every other team beneath them, they had a pretty easy time taking down. But they have just not been able to crack this. And this has been the story of 4 Zoomers for quite a long time, and probably a big reason as to why they almost disbanded in the offseason after TI-10. But they managed to stick together, bring in some new players, but again, the results aren't really showing, or at least even if they are improving, they're not improving as quickly as they need to be to actually keep up with a lot of these teams to actually get themselves a chance to make it to TI or to any of the majors. So this first series ends up being kind of a wash. The games weren't like overly one-sided. They weren't like the cleanest, you know, 10-0 card carry or 20-0 mid player from Quincy Crew or anything like that. It was more just well executed, slow, methodical gameplay from Quincy Crew that just in the end took down 4 Zoomers. And in this first series, Gunner was playing this mid Mars in both games, and neither of them it looked all that good. I believe he went 0-10 in the second one. I don't know. I feel like Gunner did not have his best performances in this regional finals, and this first series was definitely the worst of the 2 for him in particular. And for the second series here, we had TSM versus Evil Geniuses, which was a series I was very much looking forward to, because very similarly to RNG versus Aster in China, where we had 2 teams face off against one another. You know, one team beats the other. In this case, Evil Geniuses took down TSM when Evil Geniuses was really starting to ramp up their momentum. TSM struck back in those tiebreakers and showed that they are able to be just as competitive as EG. And now we are going to have a third meetup between them to maybe see who would end up taking it all. And TSM looked very, very good, and Crit even talked about it afterwards, after they took down 4 Zoomers in the lower bracket, which I'll get to, how they were kind of underestimating TSM a little bit, and they shouldn't have, and TSM definitely made them pay for it. It was a very well played series. And ultimately, it was just, again, TSM being very, very good at understanding the map. And at any point when they're having to lose any objectives or anything like that, they're making EG have to make tough decisions whether or not they want to keep pressuring one side or maybe attend to another side, all making space for Tomato in the process, who would end up carrying a few of these games. So, surprisingly or not surprisingly, Evil Geniuses found themselves in the lower bracket in the first round of this tournament. Luckily for them, though, again, they're playing against 4 Zoomers who have been struggling a lot to play against any of these top 3 teams. And not going to say that this was a total wash, but these games were relatively one-sided. Again, it was more slow, methodical. Abed was popping off in both games. And again, Gunnar not exactly having the performances that we're used to seeing with Gunnar, where a lot of the times 4-zoomers will still lose, but Gunnar will make a lot of space in the early game. He'll have a pretty decent KDA. He'll be making a lot of nice rotations, but the rest of the team doesn't really come online like they need to. This was definitely not Gunnar's series whatsoever. So 4-zoomers knocked out in the first round of the lower bracket. They finished 4th place. Again, very suitable for their name. They earned themselves $10,000, and again, no DPC points for them. So again, their chances at making it to TI or any of the lands, not exactly looking good from here. All right, now moving on to round 2, where I'm going to be starting off with the lower bracket matchup because I'm going to be going in chronological order as we go through here. This was, of course, day 2 of the tournament now. We have Evil Geniuses. Oh, sorry, that was day 2. Evil Geniuses taking them down. I'm going to be moving on to Quincy Crew. I got a little bit mixed up. I apologize. So Quincy Crew versus TSM FTX. This was another series I was looking forward to because, again, Quincy Crew and TSM were both tied 4-0 during the season. They were both looking like the powerhouses of the region. I personally was favoring, well, previously known as Undying, just a little bit more just because of how long they'd been staying together and how well they'd been playing to that point. And Quincy Crew, even though they were also 4-0, they looked a little bit more shaky along the way. But Quincy Crew made no mistake and took TSM down in pretty handily fashion. Again, not the cleanest wins from Quincy Crew, but they were very slow and methodical and well thought out strategies that they executed quite well. And we didn't really see all that much in this series. In fact, these were some of Quincy Crew's roughest games in this entire tour, specifically that last one. The series is tied 1-1 heading into this. A winner makes it to the grand finals, which means you're guaranteed DPC points if you win this last matchup. And it was just a total stomp on the part of TSM onto Quincy Crew. They tried running an SF mid strategy on Quinn, which didn't end up working out so well. Tomato was playing his Storm Spirit, who ended up going 7-0, and it was a last pick Brood. So at the end of the day, it was a stomp. It was a game 3 last pick Brood, so it's not like the Brood was introduced earlier in the series. And TSM definitely makes them pay for it with a total kill score of 26-4 in this deciding game 3 to get themselves into the grand finals. So good for TSM. They make it to the grand finals. And as for Quincy Crew, they're looking for a bit of a bounce back. They're facing off against Evil Geniuses in the lower division in that lower bracket finals. And again, it's the same kind of thing where Quincy Crew, in both games that they lose, they kind of got handled, where for the second game in a row, they're held to just 4 kills throughout the entire game. It was a total stomp. Nightfall's Mars was very impressive. I heard a lot of chatter about how Nightfall has really come into his own throughout these regional finals and really improved. And I can definitely see that. You know, the whole position change that he had to go through once he did come to Evil Geniuses was very apparent. But to his credit, he has gotten a lot better and a lot more comfortable, which is a very important thing when you're playing a role like the offlane, is to get comfortable in your position, get comfortable with what you're able to do with the heroes that are new in your pool. And Nightfall, this was probably his best series throughout the entire tournament. Quincy Crew did have a pretty decent time in game 2. Yawar, specifically on his Templar Assassin, looked fantastic. He was given a bunch of space and he made them pay for it. He absolutely popped off. And there was no way for even Arteezy's Naga Siren to deal with it. And so this is heading to a deciding game 3. And once again, Quincy Crew kind of struggles to get things going, as this was just kind of a stomp. There were some moments where it felt like the game maybe was about to turn, but they had made like these infinite, like huge stacks in the triangle for Yawar's Medusa. But he was only level 5 at about 10 minutes, and so EG just invaded, stole the whole stacks, and it really felt like things were starting to snowball out of control. Abed playing Razor, which was a bit weird because that has really been Arteezy's hero throughout this patch, but he's showing that he can be just as versatile. He's not just a Storm Spirit and Puck main, but yeah, this was kind of a rough game for Quincy Crew. And again, a few moments here and there where we thought maybe they could turn around, but at the end of the day, final kill score of 43-8. This didn't feel like Quincy Crew's best showing. And so now we're heading into the grand finals, where we have yet another rematch between Evil Geniuses and TSM. And all of these series that they've had against one another so far have been very one-sided. In that first one, EG kind of crushed TSM, and then in the next 2, TSM was the one crushing Evil Geniuses. And so I was curious to see what we were going to have here. Evil Geniuses was definitely starting to pick up momentum with their lower bracket run, but TSM was doing just the same in the upper bracket. And this ended up being probably the best grand finals of the entire regional finals. Just because of the fact that, one, it went to 5 games, but also there was a ton of just constant back and forth throughout a bunch of these games, a lot of crucial mistakes that would end up costing certain teams in games. For example, in game 1, where Evil Geniuses picks the last pick Broodmother for Nightfall, and as soon as you see that, you kind of go, oh shit, it's a really good Broodmother game. I wonder how they're going to deal with it. And they kind of fell behind a little bit at the start for TSM, but to their credit, they really turned things around. They kind of gave Evil Geniuses a run for their money, getting them a little bit worried here and there. And just as they were starting to turn the game around, just as soon as they were starting to turn that Broodmother a bit obsolete, they went for the Roshan, but they didn't put it on their Ember Spirit on Bryle, who had just bought back the fight before. And this is like past 60 minutes in. This is like very, very late game. Or sorry, not past 60 minutes. We're close to 60 minutes at this point. And they don't put the Aegis on him, and in the next fight, he just gets hexed and instantly bursted, and all of a sudden, the team is fighting 5v4, no buyback on one of your most crucial cores who has just been doing substantial damage throughout these late-game team fights. And the game, unfortunately, is just kind of lost from there. You know, Tomato takes the Aegis on his Luna, who did have buyback. Whether or not that was a call that the entire team made, or maybe it was just a mistake, a miscommunication between Bryle and the rest of the team, it's one that ended up costing them a game. And a game that looked quite impressive for them. Again, playing against that last pick Broodmother. For game 2, though, however, they would come back and they would strike back quite strongly. Again, a lot of swings throughout this game, but they managed to make it work. And Tomato's Morphling, man, he just looked so confident and so impressive on his Morphling throughout this entire series. Every game that he got it, he just looked fantastic. And so they take this one. Despite it not being the cleanest win, they even up the series 1-1. So, heading into game 3, not really sure what to expect. We've kind of seen a bit of some blunders on both sides. We've seen some very excellent showings on both sides. And that's kind of what we got for game 3, where once again, it comes down to a crucial fight in the mid to late game period where TSM gets kind of caught off guard by a rotation from Evil Geniuses, and Tomato's PA dies without buyback. And the game just unfortunately ends right there. It is too late in the game to be dying without buyback, and he does, and the game is just over. And you just feel like it was just ripped out of your hands, because TSM did have a lot of momentum in this game. They were likely going to be able to start ramping up momentum and maybe take this third game. And once again, it's one crucial mistake that ends up costing it to them. And now they're down 2-1 in the best-of-5 grand finals. But for game 4, once again, they pick up Tomato's Morphling. Bryle was playing his Queen of Pain, which looked absolutely fantastic. And really, TSM, something that was stated a lot, and I full-heartedly agree with, and a big reason as to why this series was so fun, was even when Evil Geniuses was winning the games, TSM was just like on another level when it came to strategy. They were out-strategizing them. They were playing the map very well. Their team fight execution was stellar. It was just, again, those crucial screw-ups in the late game that cost them those games. But game 4 was probably TSM's best showing so far when it comes to how well they're able to play. And again, just these stellar performances from everyone on the team. Everyone. Dubu, Moonmeander, Saberlight, Tomato, Bryle, all of them playing fantastic. Again, I cannot highlight Tomato's Morphling enough. He really carried this game. And now we're heading into a game 5, which was one that at the start looked like really could go either way. And then basically TSM had gotten all BKBs, all 3 BKBs on all of their cores at exactly the same time. It was quite early on in the game too, and Evil Geniuses really didn't have any spells that would go through BKB. They had a Disruptor, they had a Mars offlane, and a Morphling carry, which doesn't feel all that great in the early game, let alone against some heroes with BKB. And unfortunately, for TSM, as soon as you get these BKBs, they instantly smoke, and Evil Geniuses reads this. So you're like, ah, crap, you know, TSM had this huge power spike, but now they're not going to be able to find anything. And as soon as they start to retreat, knowing the Evil Geniuses read their smoke, Evil Geniuses themselves smoke up. And they see the BKBs, they see the TSM cores farming on the map right now, showing that they have BKBs in their inventory. They still try to pick a fight, and they just cannot burst anyone because they all have BKBs, and they don't have any spells to go through it. There was a play where Nightfall maybe would have hit a spear onto Tomato's Troll Warlord, which maybe would have killed him, but it really didn't look like there was all that much damage follow-up, even if the spear had landed, and so he just instantly pops BKB, and the fight is just over. And quite frankly, although the game wasn't as anticlimactic as this, the game really did spiral out of control from here, and TSM, they take game 5 after dropping 2 games where they likely should have or could have won, just making a few crucial mistakes. They end up taking this series, and they take the entire regional finals, including $50,000 and 250 DPC points, which very likely will end up paying off in the end and will help them get a spot into that TI. Again, remember, this TI is going to have additional spots. Not for DPC points specifically, but what a fantastic showing for TSM. And again, for the org themselves, TSM, they got to feel really good right now about this new signing, as they are now regional champions and are very likely on their way to the next major and maybe even TI. So we'll see. But yeah, best of luck to them. For Evil Geniuses, this has been a pretty polarizing tour for them so far. I'm curious where they go from here. A lot of people have been on the anti-Nightfall train, but especially ever since MSS came in and sort of helped Evil Geniuses turn their tour around, Nightfall comes back for these regional finals, and he really does improve a lot. But is it enough? Is it enough for the fans to really gather and rally behind Nightfall? Is it enough for Evil Geniuses themselves to actually hold on to him? I guess we'll see. But for now, they're going to have to settle for just 130 DPC points, which is still good, still better than 0 like the rest of the teams in here. And they're going to have also $25,000. So we'll see where they go from here. And now is how I do this in one take. All right. We got this whiteboard over here. And now we get the next one. Oh. All right, seamless. Oh, it's not in frame. There we go. Oh, I should probably move this a little bit like that. Apologies for this little delay, but it's better than having to go through my editor just for that little thing. All right, Eastern Europe, which again, I had talked about it in my preview, just like China, wasn't one that I was particularly super excited about. Not to say that there wouldn't be any great Dota or anything like that, but I think we all kind of knew who was going to be winning this from the very beginning. And although that ended up being true, it wasn't exactly the route that we thought was going to be taking place. And that, of course, being this first series here where we had Team Spirit coming as the #1 seed, the undefeated team in the DPC, only dropping 1 game throughout the entire thing, losing early on to Hellraisers, who, to their credit, kind of stomped Team Spirit in those 2 games that they did win. They're playing very well, and Rebel, again, just the amount of fantastic mid laners in this region in particular has been incredible. Rebel has been fantastic. We have GPK, who has been proving himself to be probably the most technically skilled and early game rotation and just high impact player across the entire DPC. Of course, we have Toronto Tokyo too, who we cannot say enough about Toronto Tokyo. And so heading into this, I was, obviously expecting for Team Spirit to win this. Hellraisers have been on a bit of a downward spiral from here, but Rebel, again, playing some fantastic Dota throughout this series and really single-handedly being the reason why Team Spirit had such a hard time, because he was single-handedly putting a bullet right into Toronto Tokyo, who has really been a lot of the reason why Team Spirit has been able to get off to such good starts and start snowballing momentum early, is because he's usually able to win his mid lane so handedly, which did not happen in this series. And so, despite what we all thought, Team Spirit heading down to the lower bracket for this first round of this regional finals. Joining them would be PuckChamp, who also were coming into this with quite a lot of momentum against a team that had been shaky throughout the tour. However, Virtus.Pro, as opposed to Hellraisers, has actually been on the up and up since the turning point of the new year, since 2022. And Virtus.Pro just looked like they're on a completely different level in this series. They kind of just stomped both games. Game 2 was a little bit less of a stomp, but at the end of the day, there was just no response for pure CK. They didn't have any way to kill him, and he made it look quite good. A hero that has been rather untraditional for the current meta and the current patch, they made look quite good. And so Virtus.Pro would move on, and I was expecting it to be Virtus.Pro and maybe Spirit in round 2, but they wouldn't end up meeting quite yet. Rather that, we had Team Spirit taking on PuckChamp in the lower division. And this is really when Team Spirit started to build up their momentum once again. Again, it was a total stomp. Again, CK showing up a little bit strange, not a hero that we're typically used to in the patch. However, rather than being played in the carry position, Team Spirit is playing it in the offlane on Collapse, who has also just been showing that he's more than just a Magnus main, which is ridiculous if you guys thought he was just a Magnus main. I even talked about it after TI10, how his most played hero and his most successful hero at TI10 was actually Tidehunter. I think he was like 6-0 in Tidehunter or something like that. But regardless, Team Spirit starting to build up a bit of momentum, and poor PuckChamp just happened to be in the way of that. And so they get knocked out, finish 4th place, earn themselves $10,000, no DPC points. Moving on to the next round in the upper bracket, we have Virtus.Pro taking on Hellraisers, and this was one I was quite curious about. Again, Hellraisers looking like they were a completely different team as they were to the end of the first tour, and Virtus.Pro really showing that they can be quite dominant. In this first game, it's a total stomp. Virtus.Pro playing fantastic, specifically GPK, his Invoker making all the right rotations early on to make space for his carry and his offlaner, and just all around super nice rotations, well played by GPK. Another stellar performance, and a big reason as to why he has been such a prevalent name in the region for so long. Or at least as of late, I should say. Game 2, however, and this series really was just a showcase of the mid laners. Game 2, it was Rebel from the mid lane just being absolutely fantastic on his Lina, just completely solo carrying, and the game really just kind of hit a certain point where it was like, oh shit, we have a Lina problem, and Rebel was that Lina, and he did not let up whatsoever. So heading into Game 3, we had 2 stellar performances from the opposing mid laners. What were we going to see for Game 3? Well, another stellar performance from one of the mid laners. This time it's GPK's Puck, who has also been one of his more classic heroes as of late, especially during this patch. Just absolutely popping off, making all the nice rotations, always being at the right place at the right time. And Virtus.Pro, they steal a series off of the back of GPK, in my opinion here. But regardless of how they win it, they end up in the grand finals, where they would end up waiting for their opponent, who would be the winner of this lower bracket series between Hellraisers and Spirit, a rematch of the upper bracket, where Hellraisers, again, like I mentioned, kind of stomped Spirit in those 2 games that they won. But that would not be the case. Again, this was Spirit on their A game once again, starting to build up that momentum once again. And both of these games or just kind of stomps. Toronto Tokyo playing his classic Queen of Pain in both of them, just making the hero look even more broken than the hero already is currently. Yatoro was on his Luna, Collapse on his classic Mars, which has been fantastic as of late, as per usual. And in Game 2, we had Yatoro on his Monkey King, which is a hero that we haven't seen as much in the carry position as of late. Usually when it does get picked up, we see it a lot in the support role, which is what we saw a lot with, well, specifically Mira, also on Team Spirit, and also Moon Meander from TSM. But yeah, Team Spirit, they made no mistake by taking down Hellraisers quite handedly in the lower bracket finals, which means they would be on their way to a grand finals, which was quite anticlimactic once again. And it really felt like Team Spirit just knew exactly what they needed to do in both games, exactly knew what they needed to do to shut down Virtus.Pro right there at the get-go, which was exactly what they did to them earlier on in the tour when they faced off against one another again, and that is to directly shut down GPK. Don't give him a game. For both Game 1 and 2, GPK was playing his Invoker, and every single time he tried to make a rotation, it was met with immediate resistance from Team Spirit, immediate rotations, and there was just no chance. Specifically in Game 1, Team Spirit was running a very snowball-heavy lineup with a carry Drow and Yatoro, an offlane. We had an offlane OD on Collapse, and then a mid Queen of Pain. So all of these range cores just beating on your towers, especially with a Meteor Hammer as well, just overwhelming amount of damage. And for a game that went to 40 minutes, it really didn't feel like it needed to last that long. That was just Spirit kind of playing it very methodical, and a very stompy Game 1. And again, Game 2, as I already mentioned, GPK on his Invoker, no space. He was not given any room to make any sort of rotations, to make any sort of map pressure, and Team Spirit really made them pay for it and took Game 2 quite handedly. But it was really Game 3 that was the most stompy game. The final kill score, 19-3 at just 18 minutes. Under 18 minutes, this game was over. Game 3 of the grand finals. And this was just a total stomp. And it was even with heroes, classic player-hero combos like DM's Timbersaw, who just absolutely shredded this past year at DPC. They picked that, and it just looked like a wet noodle against Team Spirit. We also had GPK on his classic Storm Spirit, which also just did not work whatsoever. So you have VP playing some of their most comfort heroes, some of their most successful heroes of the past year, and Team Spirit, that's when they crushed them the hardest. So Virtus.Pro, they meet a brick wall in the grand finals. They get taken down 3-0 for a clean sweep. This gotta feel pretty bad, but they do get some DPC points to make up for that. 130 of them, including 25,000 DPC points. And for Team Spirit, they walk away with $50,000 and 250 DPC points. And so if there was any doubt that Team Spirit was going to be making it to TI, this is definitely a big hint that these guys are looking to defend their throne, and they're looking quite good. Again, this is their first series that they've dropped in the DPC format since TI10, since that first round of TI10, and this one really caught me off guard, but they showed that they were able to bounce back quite handedly, and they took this series. So yeah, we'll see what they do from here. Again, Virtus.Pro, they did very well. They got some points, but will we see any changes for their roster? For any of the other teams here, like Hellraisers, who kind of had a bit of a downward spiral at the end of the tour, but they had some success in this regional finals. Will we see any changes for them? PuckChamp as well, kind of having a disappointing showing here. You guys can let me know in the comments down below. And later today, I think I'll be doing a standings update when it comes to DBC points, just to kind of update everyone on where every team is at right now. Including with all those deductions and stuff that certain teams have, like the teams in Southeast Asia who made some changes to their roster heading into the regional finals, those being Boom and T1. And now, finally, for the last region of the day, we're going to be talking about China's regional finals, which actually were the ones that finished the earliest and also started the earliest. But again, very similarly to Eastern Europe, not the one that I was most looking forward to because the winner was kind of already written in stone. Again, maybe not the most clean win that we would have expected, but it's still PSG.LGD. I'll just come right out and say it. And right from the get-go, right in that first series, specifically this series was one I was very much looking forward to, despite this whole regional finals not being one that I was overly excited about. And that is because EHOME was one of the teams that actually had the best showings against PSG.LGD throughout the tour, with a very, very impressive play in that one game that they did win, playing against some of PSG's classic heroes like Nothing to Say's Tinker, and showing off very, very well how a lot of these carry players and core players on this team are able to really take over a game, even against some of the best teams here. And we kind of got that in game 2 here, but for game 1 and 3, this really was just the PSG.LGD show, just making space for EHOME while having Nothing to Say kind of popping off on his magic space-making tempo mid-hero. Game 1, it was the Storm Spirit. We also had a Beastmaster and a Weaver on that team, so as soon as EHOME's Troll Warlord came online, there was just really no way that they could put a stop to all this map pressure that they had. And in Game 3, EHOME's Wraith King, Nothing to Say's Quap, again, they just really had no way to put an end to this stuff, even with a hard carry Templar Assassin and a support Weaver, who again has been one of the more broken heroes of the patch. But in game 2, and again, I had already talked about game 1 and 3, which means PSG won the series, but game 2, this was a pretty hefty stomp from EHOME, I gotta say. This was a pretty one-sided one, and it's, again, Zeal playing on his, now I would say, classic Night Stalker. It's a hero that he's been playing quite a lot, despite it not being necessarily the most popular hero of the patch. Definitely not one of the ignored heroes like Axe or Doom right now, but definitely one of those niche heroes that Zeal has been proving time in and time out that he is able to completely snowball a game with, even against like an EHOME Naga Siren and a mid Nothing to Say Storm Spirit who played it 2 games in a row. They were able to put a stop to that. So very good game, very well executed. I thought Shiro on his Ursa was very, very impressive. And heading into game 3, again, aren't able to put a stop to PSG.LGD, but it was still a series that I would consider worthwhile watching. It was quite back and forth. For the second series here in the upper bracket and the last one of day 1, we had Aster taking on RNG, which again, very similar to what I've already talked about in this video, was very resemblant to TSM versus Evil Geniuses, where we had 2 teams that have already met up twice previously in the tour, one during their actual head-to-head matchup, the next one in a tiebreaker matchup, and we had different results in both of them, so I was excited to see who would end up taking this one. And RNG, they take the series, and again, it seems like every single game that both teams won were kind of one-sided, where we had RNG kind of stomping game 1 and game 3 and Aster stomping game 2. But regardless, RNG are showing that they're starting to get a little bit more of that consistency, which has really been the thing that's been biting them a lot as of late, specifically in their hard carry God King, who I thought had a pretty fantastic regional tour, much better than I think we could have expected. Despite the fact that they're playing against Aster, who have Ori on it, who in that second game was just absolutely popping off on his Queen of Pain, just making all the space in the world for, of course, the hard carry Templar Assassin on Monet, which once it did come online, make no mistake, Monet will win that game. So heading to the lower bracket, we've got our 2 losers of the first round, EHOME and Aster. And curious to see how this would go, especially with both teams having some highlights in their previous tour, in their previous series. We did end up having a pretty one-sided matchup here, or at least in both games. Again, hard-fought matchup for EHOME in that first game win. I thought Shiro was playing fantastic on his Wraith King. Zeal, again, on his Night Stalker, showing that he is able to solo carry games on his Night Stalker, and he does it once again in this regional finals. But from there, they just aren't able to gather that momentum once again. And Ori in game 2 on his Lina was fantastic, just making all the space in the world. And Monet on his PA in game 3 just finishes off with a 19-2-13 record. This was a bloodbath of a game. Total kill score of 38-30 in just a 40-minute game. So quite a lot of kills in this one. And Aster, they walk away with the win, which means they're moving on to the second round of the lower bracket, where they would end up facing off against the loser of PSG.LGD versus RNG, which, little to our knowledge, would end up being a preview of what the grand finals would be. But before we got there, we had a matchup between the two of them, obviously. And PSG.LGD, despite the fact that they win this one 2-0, this was not one of those 2-0 matchups that was necessarily one-sided or that was necessarily overly dominant from the winning team. Quite the opposite, actually, where it was PSG.LGD showing why they're one of the best teams. It's one thing to be a team that is very dominant and can get off to a good start and know how to play the map when you're ahead. But when you're a team that also knows how to play from behind and knows what you need to be sacrificing and what you actually need to be fighting for at certain points in the game, makes an excellent team. And that is what we saw in this series with PSG.LGD. As in game 2, they got heavily outkilled specifically early on in the game, but they knew exactly what sacrifices to make, what towers to let go of, what team fights to take. And all of a sudden, despite the fact that they're down by like 15 kills at around 30 minutes, PSG.LGD is knocking on your front door. EHOME was just playing his Templar Assassin, I believe, in that game. And as soon as he came online, again, you know, it's a Templar Assassin. We've seen a lot of her carry this patch, but it was like super impressive play. And again, a match I would highly recommend watching to anyone who wants to learn how to play from behind, at least as like a team, because PSG.LGD just does it so well. Game 2 of the series, again, game 1 was pretty close as well. Not nearly as much of a comeback from PSG.LGD, but a hard-fought match nonetheless. RNG was definitely not just rolling over in the face of fear. And despite that, PSG.LGD does end up moving on to the grand finals, where that means that they'd be guaranteed at least 130 DPC points. As for RNG, they're headed down to the lower bracket, where again, they're meeting up with Aster, who they've been meeting up with a ton in this past little bit. And this time seems to be the easiest matchup of all 4 of them that they've had so far, as Somnus just kind of popped off in both of these games. First game was his Lina, and despite it being a bit of a slow game, he was just making all the right movements on the map, just pressuring the right spots and showing up for the right kills, just ultimately just outplaying the Ori mid lane. Fantastic game. And then game 2, Somnus on the TA, Chalice on his Night Stalker, which again has been getting more and more popular with time. Aster really just didn't really show up for this series. Both games kind of one-sided. Both of them ended in sub 35 minutes with rather one-sided kill scores. Game 2 specifically was a 35-10 kill score. So RNG, they have a chance to redeem themselves in the grand finals against PSG.LGD. And they get off to a good start. They take down the first game in pretty dominant fashion, winning in just over 30 minutes by almost doubling or more than doubling PSG.LGD's kills. And it was a bit rough early on for RNG, but they win one crucial team fight that ultimately just snows the game out of control. God King playing on his troll, again looking a lot more reliable as of late, and he makes no mistake, and he takes down PSG.LGD for game 1. And that's kind of it. That's kind of where RNG kind of clocked out of the series a little bit, as the rest of the games felt like they were getting progressively more stompier for the side of PSG.LGD, where game 2 was a relatively close one. Relatively early, there was a lot of swings back and forth with net worth and stuff like that, but EHOME's Terrorblade just being, again, one of his classic heroes throughout the past couple of years, just coming online, just absolutely taking over the game. And from that point, RNG just really stood no chance. Game 3, a total kill score of 40-12. This was a total stomp. Jin Q on his Weaver was just unbelievable. He was just everywhere on the map, being a total menace. He was hitting all the nicest saves and just being a real thorn in RNG's side. And now heading into game 4, a game that RNG must win to keep the series alive, this was also just a complete stomp. EHOME's PA is all I really have to say about that. So PSG.LGD, they take the series and the total regional finals, earning themselves $50,000 and 250 DPC points. So not only finishing first place in those regional finals, but also in the first tour, meaning that they are one of the top teams, tied for one of the top teams in DPC points throughout the entire DPC. So again, I'm going to be having a video going over all that stuff soon. And if you guys don't want to miss that, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I would really love to hear you guys' thoughts about any of these matches. Which ones would you guys recommend watching to one another? Again, this first series here between PSG.LGD and EHOME, and also the second one here, game 2, PSG.LGD versus RNG in the upper bracket finals. Definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later today.